Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Hockey Writers here. We're going to be talking playoff previews. First one going here is probably one of the first ones that were finalized is the LA Kings and the Edmonton Oilers in the Pacific Division here. The Oilers make the playoffs. Everyone wasn't sure that they were going to after their stretch of kind of some bad games after that great start of the season. But they're there, and the Kings are very surprising team to come in as well. So brought in a couple writers. Colton Pankiw's here. He covers the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames. How are you doing, Colton?
Good, Matt. Excited to get going.
And I also have Austin Stanovich here. He covers the LA Kings, so he'll give some insight on the Kings and how they do in this series. How you doing, Austin?
Good. It's good to see the Kings back in the playoffs. I'm excited for it.
Should be an interesting series. Last time they met was way back in 1992, when Wayne Gretzky's Kings were beaten by the Oilers. They won 6 games, which is weird because the Gretzky was a big star for the Oilers, and it was the other way around in that one. So that was a pretty close series, but that was the last time they met. So it's kind of surprising, actually, when I look back at that in 1992. So it's a long time coming. But looking at the present, the season series was pretty lopsided. The Oilers won that 3-1. Not lopsided in the score, but in the season series, they were just, Oilers outscored them just 13-12. So it wasn't like a huge blowout or anything like that. But the one key stat I was looking at was the Oilers were 0 for 10 on the power play. And so Colton, I'll go to you first on this one. Will this be a big factor since the Kings kind of shut them down on a power play was their bread and butter all season? Do you think that's going to be a big factor in this series?
Yeah, I mean, the Oilers kind of roll as their power play does. They've shown that the past few seasons. I think you see when they got swept against the Jets last year, which they were favorites heading into that series like they are again this year. And they just didn't get a lot of calls and then weren't able to put the puck in the back of the net. So I think 5-on-5 scoring for them is going to be huge. Since the addition of Evander Kane, that's really picked up. But I do think, obviously if their power play kind of goes like it did in the regular season, they could be in trouble. So that definitely needs to step up.
Well, it's on the other side, Austin, with the Kings. They were 3 for 16, but all 3 goals came in one game. So they were 3 for 5 in their 5-1 win, their only win on December 5th. I mean, it's not that long ago, but do you think they could reignite that power play magic? Because they didn't do anything the rest of the way. Do you think they'd be able to do that? Because the goals were scored by guys that are going to be in the lineup, except for Drew Doughty. I mean, Kempe had a couple goals in that game. What do you think on that?
No, the Kings power play is one of the worst power plays I've seen in my entire life watching hockey. Like when I look at the stats, the fact that they're, I think, 5 teams with the worst power play is shocking to me. Like I don't understand how that's even possible. I don't think that the Kings power play is going to come into effect in a positive way for the Kings. I do still think that the Oilers power play is something to watch out for just because the Kings haven't been great on the PK across the season. They've been better the last 10, 15 games, but I would not be confident saying that they're going to be able to continue shutting down that Edmonton power play that's third in the league. It's just not a recipe for success ever.
No, I mean, yeah, they were lucky in the regular season, 0 for 10, shutting down 10 power plays. But yeah, if they get into a battle that way, I don't think they're going to come out on top of that one. Especially so much hot firepower that now with Evander Kane added to it too, it's insane. And so, I mean, look at the forwards. In that season series, McDavid had, of course, and I mean, he's leading the league in scoring. So, of course, he's the leading scorer in the series. So 3 goals, 3 assists, had 6 points in the season series. Kane had 3 points, Draisaitl only 2. And then Bouchard had a goal and 2 assists, but that was all in one game. So, I mean, the forwards, it's kind of lopsided in the scoring. Colton, what do you think? Do you think that the Oilers are just going to roll over them with their offense, or is it going to be a really tight? I mean, the regular season series was pretty tight. I mean, most of the games, except for that 5-1, there was 3-2 overtime games. What do you think on how tight this series could be?
Yeah, so I mean, I think most people were kind of saying that the Kings would be the ideal matchup for the Oilers, and most kind of think that they will run through it pretty easy. But I mean, the last two playoff series for the Oilers, like they got the Blackhawks in that play-in series, who they were heavy favorites against, and they lost. And then again, like I had mentioned, swept by the Jets last year. So
Yeah.
I mean, anything can happen. I think with just the past 2 years with how they went, I think McDavid's going to be really driven to get through this one. So I do expect the Oilers to win. But with that being said, as lopsided as the forwards appear on paper scoring wise, like LA's got some good guys that can play shutdown roles, like Kopitar obviously, and then Philip Danault too, who is a really good pickup.
Yeah.
So I think there's still plenty that, like, I don't see it being as easy of a series as some are kind of predicting right now.
Yeah, I mean, Austin, like Colton mentioned Kopitar and Danault. Danault is the big factor in shutting down a lot of players in this, for the Montreal Canadiens when they went to the Stanley Cup final. Do you think he's going to be a huge factor in this series? I mean, he did a pretty good job last year.
Yeah, he's going to be massive for this series. He's been the Kings MVP this season. He's been everything they'd hoped for and more when they signed him. His offensive impact has really been the big thing that a lot of people didn't see coming. It's been really the nice surprise for him. But I do think it's going to come down to, Kopitar versus McDavid or Draisaitl. I'm not sure how they're going to match it up right now, but those matchups, Kopitar and Danault versus Draisaitl and McDavid, or however it ends up coming down, that's going to be the big deciding factor for me, because you can't shut down McDavid and Draisaitl. That's just not going to happen, but you can try and slow him down. And you can try, in Danault's case, I think he can try and outscore him. And that's not something people would have said a year ago, but the way he's going, I mean, he's going to finish the season with at least 28 goals, nearly 30 goal scorer. I mean, if he can keep that level of play up, he can try and get into not necessarily a shootout, but at least keep up with them offensively.
Yeah, and he's great on faceoffs too. So puck possession is going to be huge whenever he's matched up against whoever. I mean, Draisaitl, McDavid. Thing is, they got Kopitar and Danault, so they could go and split. Even if the Oilers go and split into two lines, which they seem to be doing lately, they can still match up pretty well, I think, right? So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. But let's just finish it off with the goaltending. It's a big factor. The Edmonton Oilers, we know, as we talked about with Mike Smith, Koskinen, Stuart Skinner. The goaltending has been a question mark all season long. Trade deadline, nothing happened. So Mike Smith seems to be going into this playoffs as the starter. Colton, he had a pretty good series, regular season series, 2-0, 2 goals against average, 9.38 save percentage. Koskinen had worse numbers. He was 1-1, 3.84 GAA, 901 save percentage there. I mean, Smith has got some confidence from that. And what type, is he going to be a huge factor? I mean, he's arguably on his best run of the season, probably the last couple of years. What do you think Smith is going to have an impact in this series?
Yeah, it's interesting. Up until about a month, maybe a month and a half ago, it looked like Koskinen was going to be the guy for the playoffs, but Smith's kind of finally started to get healthy. He just wasn't playing well at the start of the year. He was just kind of in and out of the lineup with injuries, and he's really heated up lately. He's on a 9-game winning streak right now. And I know before their last game, he had a 1.75 goals against in the month of April. So that would have went down even a bit lower now because he let in just 1 in that game. So, I mean, he's heating up at the right time. Obviously, at 40 years old, there's always the risk of re-injury. And we've seen the past few years of him in Edmonton, there's also the inconsistencies. But, I mean, this is basically the best thing the Oilers could have hoped for right now, was going in with one of their goalies really hot. So, it's still a big question mark, but there is some reason for optimism right now.
For sure. On the other side, Austin, you got Jonathan Quick, another veteran goaltender. He's not as old as Mike Smith, but he's getting up there too. Do you think he can reignite his previous playoff magic? I mean, he won a couple cups, and was a key factor in all those games. Do you think he's going to be huge in this series?
Yeah, I do. I mean, he's kind of like Mike Smith. He's heating up down the stretch here. He's looked a lot. He's kind of dialed the clock back, and I think that's going to be a big factor in this series, is which veteran goalie can turn the clock back and play like they did back in 20. I mean, it's the 2012 goalie rematch we didn't know we needed, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of been a weird season for Quick. He started out so hot, and then he fell away, and everyone kind of thought that Cal Pearson was going to take the net, and then he just came storming at the end when the Kings really needed him. And if there's anything we know about Jonathan Quick, there's not a more competitive guy in the entire league. Yep. So I would not be shocked to see him really step his game up in what could very possibly be his last big run at the Cup right now.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting goaltending matchup. They both have had their moments in their career, and It's going to be very interesting. That's going to be a huge matchup to see. Just to finish it off here, some X factors, guys that you're not usually think about as being, but in the playoffs, some of these guys just all of a sudden, where did this guy come from? One example I always go back to is Fernando Pisani for the Oilers way back in their last big run with Dwayne Rolison. He was huge. I think he had 14 goals or something, but in regular season only had like 9 or 8 or over an 82 game season. So that could happen. So give us one X factor for each team. Colton, who from the Oilers could potentially be the Fernando Pisani of this year?
Yeah, I'll go with the guy he really started out the season rough. Wasn't very good last year either, but Kyler Yamamoto's really kind of stepped up his game these past few months. And obviously in the playoffs, usually the size is kind of a factor, but I think the way he plays, I don't think his small frame really affects him too much. And obviously he gets plenty of opportunity with McDavid, and there's just lots of opportunity for him to put up points. And I think he could have a really big series.
Yeah, great pick there. Yamamoto's been, again, he's been a question mark throughout the year too. So he can come to play in the playoffs and be a factor. That's going to be huge for the Oilers. Austin, anyone from the Kings that come to mind as being an X factor? They got a lot of youngsters, a lot of guys that are going to have their first taste of the playoffs. So could be any of them or a veteran that we're not thinking of.
Yeah, wouldn't it be something if former junior King Kyler Yamamoto came in and lit up the Kings in the playoffs right now? That would be pretty great. On the Kings side, I'm going to take one of those young guys. I'm going to say Quentin Byfield could be a real big X factor in this series, just because, like we just talked about, the big guys for both teams, Kopitar, Danault, McDavid, Draisaitl, I think they might cancel each other out. And then you're looking for the depth for the bottom 6 guys to really kind of have an impact on the series. And he's the one guy, I think, if he gets cooking, we all know this kind of talent level he has. He's a big body. If he plays with confidence the way kind of everyone knows he can have a huge impact in the playoffs. He can play that playoff style of hockey. And if the Kings are going to win the series, I think he's going to have to play a big role.
Yeah, he's also should have a lot of energy. He didn't play all year, right? Coming back from injury. So, that's a great pick. Just to finish this before we get some predictions here, Drew Doughty. He got injured. He's out for the rest of the way. I don't think he's coming back. There's no chance coming back for the playoffs. Is he going to missing him? Do you think the Kings are going to miss him in the playoffs, or can they get by with their young blue line? And veteran Alex Edler is now pretty much the leader that back there.
Yeah, I think this was a nightmare series for them to have to deal with without Drew Doughty. I remember back in January or February, The Athletic did an article on which defensemen play against other teams' top lines the most, and it was Drew Doughty and Charlie McAvoy by far playing against top lines the most. So obviously when you're playing against a team with the best, 2 of the best 5 players in the league, you need a guy like that in the lineup. And then Alex Edler, he's been great this season. Like you said, he's been really stepped up with Doughty being out so much. For him, again, nightmare scenario. He's been great, but in his age, he's kind of slowed down and is very prone to sticking fractions. Yeah. He gets beat with speed a lot, takes a lot of hooks and trips. And if you're playing Connor McDavid without foot speed, you are in a world of hurt. That is just the worst spot you can be in. So that does concern me, definitely. And it's crazy. They're saying Drew Doughty will miss more games this season than he's missed in the rest of his career combined. It's just been such an unfortunate year for him.
Yeah, it is unfortunate to see him go down, and I know all about Alex Edler. He's played against top lines in the past, but again, he was younger. And they got Troy Stecher now. I don't know if they're matching with them. Are they playing together or?
Stecher actually has been scratched recently. Just because Jordan Spence has come in and been so good.
Oh, he's been really
since
good.
He stepped in. Yeah, so they have Roy Spence, and they still have Dursey back there, who actually struggled a bit recently, trying to take on a little bit of a bigger role. But I think the way he's played this season, you give him the benefit of the doubt of stepping it up when the playoffs come.
For sure. Just finish off with the defense, Colton, about the Edmonton Oilers. They've been. I've always said about the Oilers, the defense is the thing that always holds them back. But they got some veterans back there, Duncan Keith. Do you think the defense is good enough to win this series or to help win this series?
I think certain guys, like the Duncan Keith trade's really taken a lot of flack, and I think for good reason. But I think he's actually been better than most Oilers fans were expecting. And the same can be said for Cody Ceci. I know a lot of people, myself included, really question that contract, and he's actually been great. But obviously the concern with the Oilers right now is they still haven't really said much about the injury that Nurse is dealing with. So it sounds like they're hopeful he can suit up game one, but like that's the way they're being so tight-lipped about it. He hasn't played in a few games now. So it's definitely a cause for concern because he's obviously their number one D-man. He plays just a ton of minutes for them. So, I mean, if he's out, that could be definitely a huge thing to watch for.
Yeah, they could be missing two big the Oilers missing Darnell Nurse and Drew Doughty for the Kings. So it's going to be interesting to watch that as well. So just finish this off here. We'll go to you, Austin. The Kings will win this series
if they can keep the game 5-on-5 and Jonathan Quick steals a series. I think that's the only way they win is if they don't get in penalty trouble and Quick really stands on his head. I don't see any other way.
Yeah, for sure. Colton, the Oilers will win this series
I think, honestly, just if they continue this momentum they've been on since they brought in Woodcroft, I think on paper, like it's a pretty good matchup for them. I think just their overall forward skill. I think if Mike Smith can even just give them average goaltending, I think they should be fine. But again, there's always that past playoff kind of struggles, I guess, that kind of creeps into your mind. But I think just if they can keep this momentum rolling forward and keep playing the same way they have to close out the season, I think they should be fine.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So now, final predictions. We're going to come back to this. If at the end of the series, see who's right or who's close. Colton, what's the series going to end as? How many games? And predict the game-winning goal, the series-winning goal.
Well, I'll take the Oilers in 6. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be as easy of a series as some people are kind of chalking it up to. Game-winning goal, because he's been so good in the playoffs for them the past few years, I'll go with Leon Draisaitl.
Good picks for sure. Austin, same thing. Final prediction, and who's going to win the series? Series-winning goal.
I'm actually going to also go Oilers at 6. I'd love to say the Kings are going to find a way to win this one, but I don't see it. I think Connor McDavid especially is going to have something to prove this postseason. He is going to go on a tear. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him have like 10 or 11 points in these 6 games. Yeah. That guy, he's going to be coming in with a vengeance. So I'm going to stick with that theme. I'm just going to say Connor McDavid scores a series-winning goal in Game 6.
And watch it be a no-name or not no-name, but like Zach Cassian or something.
Yeah, Warren Fogle can score the game. Yeah.
Or like Cody Ceci or something like that. But yeah, it's going to be fun. I think this is going to be a pretty fun series to watch. I mean, just watching Connor McDavid and Draisaitl and, Kopitar, and it's always exciting. And the youngsters that the Kings have, they got quite a few that, watching these young guys in the playoffs for the first time is always exciting. So yeah. So thanks, Colton and Austin, for coming on and doing a little preview for this series. And make sure you're just following the Hockey Writers all playoffs long, because we're going to have articles, preview posts, a whole bunch of stuff as from both Colton and Austin, I'm sure, on the series as it goes on. So keep an eye out for that, and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and thanks for watching.